Sometimes, the most dangerous weapon in history isn't a gun or a missile. It's a single person who has the courage to say just one word: no. Very few people in history have challenged not just one government, but almost every major government on Earth. Russia, Iran, China, India, Europe, even some of the most powerful intelligence agencies in the Western world all began watching the same man. He had no army, no political party, no weapons, and yet the digital world he created became more powerful than governments that spend billions of dollars every year. His name was Pavel Durov. But this story doesn't begin with Telegram. It begins inside a tiny college dorm room where a skinny 22-year-old student hadn't slept properly for several nights. There was no expensive furniture, no billion-dollar company, no investors, just an old laptop, a stack of books, a few empty coffee cups, and thousands of lines of code racing across a glowing screen.
The year was 2006. At the time, the world was watching Facebook reshape social media in America. But on the other side of the world, Russia's internet was still waiting for a platform its people could truly call their own. Millions were already online, yet no social network offered a simple, fast, and reliable way for people to connect. Pavel saw that opportunity. He wasn't trying to build just another website. He wanted to create an entire digital city where millions of people could build a new identity. After countless sleepless nights, the moment finally arrived. His website went live. The very first account belonged to Pavel himself. The second was created by his older brother, Nikolai, a brilliant mathematician whose extraordinary programming skills would one day help build one of the most secure encryption systems the world had ever seen. The beginning was small, but the internet has a way of spreading ideas like wildfire. One student invited another, then another, then another. Within weeks, thousands of college students across Russia had joined the platform. Just a few months later, it was no longer just another website. It had become the digital home of an entire generation.
Its name was The Contact. The world would soon know it simply as VK. As its user base exploded, so did the attention from major technology companies. Multi-million-dollar investment offers started pouring in. Partnership proposals, acquisition deals, huge buyout offers. But Pavel thought differently from almost every entrepreneur around him. For him, the product mattered more than the money. He believed a platform should be so simple that anyone could understand it within seconds. He personally reviewed the smallest design details, rejected features that made the experience unnecessarily complicated, and constantly refined the platform until every click felt effortless. That obsession with simplicity became VK's greatest strength. Within just a few years, it had grown into Russia's largest social network. Millions of people used it every single day. Pavel, who had once been just another university student, was now the founder of a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The media called him Russia's Mark Zuckerberg, but Pavel never saw himself as anyone's cop. He believed he wasn't just building a successful company, he was helping shape the future of the internet itself. What he didn't realize was that this very success would soon place him directly
in the crosshairs of one of the world's most powerful governments. And before long, one unexpected phone call would change the course of his life forever. Success often creates a person's greatest enemies. VK was no longer just another social network. It had become Russia's most powerful digital platform. Every single day, millions of people shared their photos, their thoughts, their friendships, and pieces of their everyday lives on that one platform. The website that had once been built inside a tiny college dorm room had now become the online identity of an entire nation. Within just a few years, its user base had grown into the tens of millions. The biggest technology companies wanted to own it. Multi-billion-dollar offers kept arriving, one after another. But for Pavel Durov, VK was never just a business. To him, it had become a symbol of internet freedom. As VK continued to grow, so did Pavel's reputation. The media began calling him Russia's most unconventional tech entrepreneur. His minimalist lifestyle, his signature black clothing, and his habit of staying away from the spotlight gave him an almost mysterious image. But inside the halls of power, an entirely different story was unfolding. The year was 2011. Following Russia's parliamentary elections, millions, thousands, soon became hundreds of thousands. As people flooded the streets, they were questioning the legitimacy of the election results. Every city, every university, every protest was connected through the same digital platform. That platform was VK. Protest groups could suddenly reach
millions of people within hours. Rally locations, meeting times, organizing plans, and critical updates spread rapidly through the platform. For the first time, the Russian government realized that the internet was no longer just a place for entertainment. It had become a force capable of shaping public opinion. That was the moment Pavel Durov entered the government's crosshairs. Pressure on VK began to grow. Government agencies demanded that certain online communities be removed, specific pages be taken down, private user information be handed over. But every request was met with the same response. VK would not betray the trust of its users. The government did not appreciate that answer. This was no longer a dispute over a website. It had become a direct confrontation between state power and digital freedom. As time passed, the pressure only intensified. Month after month, the demands kept growing.
Then, Pavel made a move that captured the attention of the entire country. Standing at the window of VK's headquarters in St. Petersburg, he folded thousands of dollars into paper airplanes and launched them onto the crowded street below. Within seconds, the area erupted into chaos. People rushed forward, pushing, shouting, and scrambling to catch the falling bills. The incident made headlines around the world. Some called it a bizarre publicity stunt. Others dismissed it as the reckless behavior of a wealthy entrepreneur. But the Russian establishment saw something very different. Pavel was no longer just a successful businessman. He had become someone capable of influencing crowds. And in the eyes of those in power, that kind of influence could be dangerous. Meanwhile, another game had already begun behind closed doors. Inside corporate boardrooms, meeting after meeting was quietly taking place. Investment firms began purchasing larger and larger stakes in the company. Ownership changed hands through complex corporate deals involving companies few people had ever heard of. Slowly, almost invisibly, control of VK began slipping away from Pavel Durov. He didn't fully realize that his own company was gradually being positioned against him. Then, toward the end of 2013, everything changed. Ukraine was engulfed in massive anti-government demonstrations. Thousands of protesters were coordinating through social media. Russian authorities requested that VK provide the private information of those organizing the movement. Names, phone numbers, private messages, internet activity records, everything. This was no ordinary government request. It would become the most difficult decision of Pavel Durov's life. If he surrendered the data, millions of users would lose their trust forever. But if he refused, he would be standing against one of the world's most powerful governments. Pavel made his choice, a decision from which there would be no turning back. Perhaps he realized at that very moment that saving VK was no longer possible. But deep inside, another vision had already been born, a platform that no government would ever be able to control. Sometimes the greatest defeat is actually the beginning of the greatest victory. When the world believed that Pavel Durov had lost his own company, the truth was he was already working on a plan that no one could have imagined. VK was no longer his, but his most valuable asset was still with him. A small team of developers he trusted completely. Only a handful of people, yet among the most brilliant programmers in the world. The most important of them was his older brother, Nikolai Durov, a mathematician whose way of thinking was years ahead of ordinary programmers. While the rest of the tech industry was busy building the next social media platform, the two brothers were trying to solve an entirely different problem. The question was simple but revolutionary. If a government could force a company to obey its demands, could anyone build a technology that not even the company that created it could fully control? That single question slowly became a mission. Pavel had realized that the greatest weakness of the internet wasn't hackers. It was centralized control. If one office could be raided, if one server could be seized, if one company could be forced into court, then the private lives of millions of people could be exposed within minutes. This time, the new beginning would not follow the old rules. In 2014, after leaving Russia, Pavel and his small team spread across different countries. There was no luxurious headquarters, no glamorous office, no massive product launch, just laptops, whiteboards covered with complex encryption
formulas, and one goal that many believed was impossible. They were building a messaging platform where privacy wouldn't be just another feature. It would become the foundation of everything. Every line of code was written with one principle in mind. User data would belong only to the user. No government, no intelligence agency, no corporation, not even
The team behind Telegram would be able to casually read it. Nikolai began developing an encryption architecture that was years ahead of existing messaging technology. Instead of storing servers inside one country, they were distributed across multiple nations. Instead of keeping all information in one location, the data was divided into separate encrypted fragments. So even if a government managed to seize one server, it would never possess a complete picture. This wasn't just another messaging app. It was a technological fortress built against mass surveillance. After months of relentless work, the world finally heard a new name, a name that would soon become
one of the most recognized technology brands on Earth, Telegram. The launch was surprisingly quiet. No massive advertising campaign, no billion-dollar marketing budget. And yet, within days, thousands of people began downloading it. Within weeks, those thousands became millions. Journalists, human rights activists, cybersecurity experts, business professionals, and ordinary people who simply wanted private conversations. They all began moving to Telegram. For them, it wasn't just another messaging app.
It had become a new symbol of digital freedom. But with every new user came a new challenge. The faster Telegram grew, the faster governments around the world began paying attention. Some countries asked for cooperation. Others demanded access to user data. Some wanted hidden backdoors inside the platform. But Pavel Durov had already made his decision. The very reason he had lost VK would become the very reason he would never allow Telegram to surrender. He understood that the real battle hadn't even begun. Very soon, an entire country would try to erase Telegram from the internet. Billions of dollars would be spent. Millions of internet addresses would be blocked. And despite all of it, one small messaging app would repeatedly outsmart an entire government machine on the battlefield of technology.
For long, when an entire government begins to fear a single mobile app, you know it is no longer just software. It has become an idea. By 2018, Telegram had become one of the fastest growing messaging platforms in the world. Every day, millions of people trusted it with their private conversations. Journalists, cybersecurity experts, human rights activists, business leaders, and ordinary citizens. For all of them, Telegram had become synonymous with trust. But the more ordinary people trusted it, the more governments began to fear it. The first major attack came from the very country where this battle had first begun. Russia. Government agencies demanded access to Telegram's encryption system. They argued that in the interest of national security, they needed the ability to read certain messages. But once that door was opened, it would never remain limited to just one government. Every country would demand the same privilege, and then privacy would become nothing more than a word. Pavel Durov had understood that reality long before anyone else. So once again, he refused to give in. In response, Russia made the decision to ban Telegram entirely. Internet service providers across the country were ordered to block access. Millions of internet addresses were blacklisted at the same time. Never before had digital censorship been attempted on such an enormous scale. But what happened next was something even Russia had not expected. Telegram didn't disappear. Instead, other online systems across the country began failing one after another. Websites, online services, cloud platforms, and countless businesses that relied on the internet suddenly stopped working. The very weapon designed to destroy Telegram had begun damaging Russia's own internet infrastructure. It became a technological war where every new restriction was answered by Telegram finding another path. Its servers constantly shifted between different networks. When one route was blocked, another appeared. When that one was cut off, a third was already waiting. It almost seemed as though a shadow was moving through the internet that no one could ever catch. Across Russia, thousands of independent developers and cybersecurity experts began creating new ways to access Telegram. Some built free proxy servers. Others developed new networking tools so ordinary people could continue using Telegram without interruption. This battle was no longer between a government and a company. It had become a clash between technology and control, between two completely
different visions of the internet. Soon, other governments around the world began applying their own pressure. Some countries temporarily blocked Telegram. Others demanded access to user data. Some tried enforcing strict new regulations. But every time, the same pattern repeated itself. Instead of surrendering, Telegram became even stronger. The more restrictions governments imposed, the more people downloaded the app. The louder the criticism became, the faster its user base continued to grow. It was a strange paradox. Governments wanted to stop it, yet every new restriction became free advertising for Telegram. Within only a few years, Telegram had become the platform of choice for hundreds of millions of people.
It was no longer just a messaging app. It had become a refuge for people who believed that in the digital age, privacy was not a privilege granted by governments, but a fundamental human right. But every victory comes with a new price. Pavel Durov rarely stayed in any one country for very long. His team was scattered across different parts of the world. No central headquarters, no permanent office, no single location that authorities could shut down to stop Telegram. He had made his company not only digitally resilient, but geographically almost impossible to defeat. Yet governments were still not ready to give up. After years of failed attempts, one European country was about to make a move that perhaps even Pavel Durov never saw come. An airport, several waiting vehicles, and within just a few minutes, the life of one of the world's most mysterious technology entrepreneurs was about to change once again.
Every person faces at least one decision that ultimately determines whether history will remember them as someone who achieved success or as someone who sacrificed everything for their principles. By then, Pavel Durov had already lost his company. He had left his homeland. For years, he had wandered from one country to another. But there was one thing he never abandoned: his principles. Telegram had now become one of the world's most influential digital platforms. Hundreds of millions of people used it every single day. In some countries, it had become the voice of democracy. In others, it had become the government's greatest concern. And in many places, it was both at the same time. Then, in 2024, the day finally arrived that many government agencies had been waiting for years. Pavel arrived in France on his private jet. To him, it probably seemed like just another routine trip. But the moment his aircraft landed,
everything changed. French authorities, who had already been waiting, detained him at the airport. Within minutes, the creator of one of the world's most secure messaging platforms was in custody. The news spread across the globe within hours. Every news network, every major technology website, every social media platform, everyone was asking the same question. Had governments finally succeeded in forcing Pavel Durov to give in? French investigators argued that Telegram was not providing enough cooperation to combat criminal activity taking place on the platform. Their position was that if a platform offered such powerful privacy, criminals would inevitably take advantage of that protection. But supporters of digital rights saw the situation very differently. They argued that if a platform could be held responsible for the crimes committed by its users, then the future of secure communication on the internet would be at risk. That was why this case was no longer just about one man's arrest. It became one of the world's largest debates over privacy, security, and freedom.
For 4 days, the entire world watched the same story. Would Telegram change its principles? Would governments finally obtain the access they had been seeking for years? But when Pavel walked out of custody, only one thing had changed: his appearance. His beliefs remained exactly the same. Once again, he refused to compromise the core principles of his platform. Then, something happened that few people had expected. Instead of weakening after the arrest, Telegram grew even faster than before. Millions of people around the world viewed the incident not simply as a legal dispute, but as a battle for digital freedom. Every new download became a statement that people still wanted control over their own private lives. Today, Telegram has reached nearly 1 billion people. It is no longer just a messaging app. It has become a lifeline for communication in war zones, a secure channel for journalists, an organizing tool for activists, and an everyday part of life for hundreds of millions of ordinary people. But perhaps the most fascinating part of this story isn't Telegram at all. It's the man who created it, a billionaire with no permanent home, no permanent country, no permanent headquarters, a man who spent much of his life moving between countries, courtrooms, and government pressure. He earned great wealth, but he sacrificed his peace. He gave the world a new path to digital privacy, yet he lost almost all of his own privacy in return. Perhaps that is the price every great revolution demands.
Pavel Durov's story isn't simply the story of a successful technology company. It is a reminder that technology is never built with code alone. Behind every innovation, there is an idea. And when someone is willing to pay any price to defend that idea, even the world's most powerful governments cannot completely defeat them. Because in the end, the question was never just about Telegram. The real question was whether the internet would belong to all of us or only to those who seek to control it. And even today, the world is still searching